Alright, hey guys, what's up? My name is Graham, welcome to my YouTube channel, and today we are talking about Jade Legacy by Fonda Lee. Hopefully you can see that right over there. My wife talks about that whenever I hold a book, I'm like, tap, 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 and I don't know why. So yeah, so anyways, the book is over there. It was a great read, and I loved it. And I'm kind of sad because I love this series so much, and it came to an end. That being said, if you have not read Jade City or Jade War, I highly recommend doing that now before watching this video because it's going to get spoiled for you a little bit. We'll talk about what's happened there and then talk about the plot of this. And I'm going to try to keep this book spoiler free, but if you're watching this, you've probably already read the series. So if not, if you want to follow along and see what my thoughts are, you can go and watch the videos here as well. And yeah, I do book reviews every single Tuesday, and then I have fun videos every Sunday and every Thursday. So like and subscribe, do all that type of stuff. Let's have a good time. So that being said, where are we? Well, the end of Jade War, Hilo and Wen were on rocky footing. That's a word. Because Wen decided, which is Hilo's wife, decided to travel to Asperia and decide to do something for the weatherman in a bad way. She wanted to get rid of a criminal organization, and she ended up dying because of it. And Andon saved her life, and it caused her to be paralyzed. Man, that's crazy to end on, because Hilo's relationship's kind of ruined. He's kind of being a single dad at the moment as she's learning how to go through rehab and use her body. And so you get to start off with Hilo being angry, being someone who isn't happy with his wife, and you get to see throughout this book that relationship repair and be different. What I love about this story is this book didn't start at the beginning of like where Jade War ended. It started like 5 years later, and this book spans like 20 years. And so you get to really see Hilo and Wen grow. You get to see Shay, who is the Call sister, also grow. She ends up finding love of her own and ruining marriage and doing all that type of stuff, and it's really, really cool. And you get to see her span throughout 20 years. You get to see Andon grow, because at the end of Jade War, he wanted to go to medical school. So you get to see him do that. And you get to see, the coolest part is seeing the kids grow up. The 3 kids that Hilo and Wen have, which is Nico, which is actually his brother's son, and he murdered the mom for it, which is crazy. You get to see Rue, and you get to see Jaya. And you get to see all of them grow up and be the children that they need to be throughout the entirety of this book. And it ends up becoming a really cool storyline through it. What I think is really unique about this story, being that 20-year gap, is it reminds me of those board games. The board games that we see at the store, like Pandemic Legacy or Betrayal Legacy. It uses that keyword legacy, right? And what's cool about those games is as you play them, you rip cards and your decisions are final. And so if you finish a session of Pandemic Legacy, when you play the game again the next time, the rules are completely different because of the choices that you made the first time. And so the games will play differently for the rest of time. You determine what happens in those games, and you get to suffer the consequences of what actually happened every time you played. And that is why this book is called Jade Legacy. She did it again, guys. Fonda Lee titling the book perfectly, because this is the book where everything from book 1, book 2 to now book 3, this is the domino effect of seeing all the pieces fall in line of this huge chess game between the No Peak clan and the Mountain clan, and it ends phenomenally with so much in between. There is just so much stuff that I can't believe happened in this book. There's so much that it's hard to recollect some of it until someone will talk about it. It's so much greatness that I couldn't put this book down, and I found myself, I'm not gonna lie, I cried during this book quite a bit. There's so many moments in this book that just brought me to tears. And it started right in the beginning. Before I go into like what it started with, it's just, this book's phenomenal. I've never read something that spans this much time and just executes it so well in an amazing way. I loved this ending. It was awesome. And so if anything you get out of this video, if you're going to stop here before I jump into spoilers, you have to read this series. If you're a fantasy fan and you don't mind, I will say there's caveats. If you don't mind violence and sexual content, right? There's a lot of violence that's graphic in here, and sexual content too. The sexual content's not as graphic, but it's in there. There's a lot of adult things going on. If you don't mind violence and sexual content, this is a great series for you in fantasy, right? This is great. Like, it might be my favorite fantasy series of all time right now. That's how much I like it. It's hard. It's debatable. I love so much, but this book series was just so good. Paid off so well. So anyways, there you go. That's what I thought about this. There's going to be a major end review at the end of like stars and stuff, but you can probably guess what it's going to be. So there we go. That being said, spoilers. I started crying immediately with the relationship with Wen and Hilo. You got to see the growth of those two so fast, and Wen being in her mind, knowing how she wanted to be strong in front of her family, especially because she's not a green bone, she's a stone eye, someone who can't use Jade. Seeing that was just so incredible, and it reminded me a lot because she was injured, being brought back to life, yes, but my wife had very similar feelings after giving birth to our son Finn, of just self-confidence and being in her own. And I felt like this was a huge narrative for that, like, person being in those shoes. It was very fascinating. Like, I want to be strong, I want to be have this appearance, and I want to be loved unconditionally. And they're valid feelings because there's just a lot of changes that happen to your body after dying, and also after, like I said, my wife experienced with giving childbirth. And so I thought that was very well done and relatable in life in general. And it just, seeing that relationship of Hilo and Wen get fixed in those first beginning pages was beautiful. I think that relationship's one of the realest ones I've read, even though it's super flawed in some areas, but it's just so real. They're very good for each other, and I just, fantastic. You also get to see relationships with Shay. Shay ends up having her shadow wound, ends up being married to him at some point and ruining his entire family. So cool. Good for you. Toxic, but you also get to see the true love aspect of, he's been there the whole time, and what he's really wanted, and seeing the faults and things of that as well. So it was fascinating seeing those two dynamics being played out side by side. It was a story of relationships and love in the beginning, and then something tragic happens. Also, there's one more thing too. Like, Andon in the background, who is my favorite character in the series, can't forget him. He is doing hospital stuff over in Asperia and making sure that the Jade is legal over there, and it's awesome. So now something happens. Woon and Hilo go to this meeting, and somebody decides to blow it up. And you know who's behind it? Our good boy Bara. He's been alive. That turd has been alive for 3 books, and I don't know how he's not dead or has been caught, even though he's blatantly said, "Hey, I've done this." And you go, dude, just kill him. Like, he had told you, but no one believes him because he's crazy and ridiculous. It's crazy. That guy's luck is insane. So Bara, he helps these people, and they end up blowing up this building with all the pillars. The Mountain Clan pillar, Mara. I don't know why I want to say Mara, but that's not right. She gets stabbed right in the neck, and then she falls out of a window. Hilo is like, oh my gosh, and then the whole thing blows up, and you think Hilo and Woon is dead. Shay is suffering. She goes to go pray, finds the pillar of the mountain, and ends up saving her life for some reason, because she's thinking that she will be the only pillar in this destroyed new world, and they need a strong leader. And then Hilo is found, and everyone is sad that Maya or Mana was not killed. It's crazy. Andon was there to be able to help with that. That part is nuts. I have never felt so sad ever over a character in my life. The next part that also just, dad moment here. You get to see Hilo raise his kids, and it's in the laws and the rules of this world. Not our world. They're warriors and fighters and into doing killing and mafia type things. So I'm obviously not going to be raising my son to be doing those things. But you get to see them talk about family, love, loyalty, and expectations set for their family. It's kind of like having a strict family, I guess you could say, of what they want them to do. And so Nico ends up being a little bit more cocky. He's not really Hilo's son, and there's a whole chapter where Hilo finally tells Nico that he murdered his mother and that his real dad was Lan. And I thought that was amazing because Hilo didn't hide anything from the kids. They're going to figure it out on their own. So you should be the one that tells them, so the full trust is there, especially when it's something as bad as that. And it was just beautifully written. The relationship with them grew stronger, but also more distant. Nico became a little bit more rebellious, and he ends up wanting to join a military mercenary camp. And he goes off to do this thing on his own, away from the family. And what was really so cool that Fondly did so well is you've loved all the main characters and you understand like Nico needs to stay. In my like you're like Nico needs to stay. But then Fondly did this amazing thing where Shay talks to the pillar and goes, he needs to do this. I don't want you to be strict with him or be disappointed, and you need to unfreeze his accounts. Why? Because this is a choice that he needs to make. And then Andon comes in and talks about him being exiled and how that wasn't good for him, even though he's on a good path now. But both of them combined talking about their experience, because Shay chose to go to a different place and came back, and Andon discovered himself in a different way, was able to push him to make a good decision of letting your kid go make a choice on their own. And so Nico got to go experience that. And it comes back in such a cool way, in such a hard way as well. And I just was, it was great. Seeing that fatherly moment was so good. And so you see that moment happen with Nico. And there's so much that happens as well. Like there's parts where Shay and Wen get captured and almost killed. Just terrible. They get tortured, at least Shay does, by having so much Jade poured on her that she can't focus, and she starts getting the itches, and she can't wear Jade anymore afterwards after she gets saved. And then you start following the kids as they're teenagers, and you start following Rue, who's going to college and making friends and just having a normal life outside of the clan, and he's enjoying it. And he met someone who challenges him in his way of thought, where he came from a place of privilege and this person doesn't agree with it. And so you could see Rue go through this and hang out with him and decide, I'm going to go do this thing. And then he ends up being tricked by accident and ends up being killed. And it wasn't by the fault of any Green Bones. He was killed by a meager, normal person, and Barrow was there. Nice, obviously. Not a nice, normal person. What am I saying? He was killed by someone who didn't have Jade. So that means no Ashio was happening. And so it was crazy. And you got to see the family be mournful because they all outlived a son. And I was brought to tears because Rue was written to be such a good kid. And you don't ever want to lose a child that early. Yeah. So this book has emotions and feelings that are just so overwhelming. And that was the huge pinnacle part, is that's when Nico comes back. And that's when he decides to give it all to the clan and listen to the last things that his brother told him. And he learned so much out there. And there's so many dominoes and things that happen in the politics and stuff that you can get into that are just incredible scenes. But they're not the important message that I received from this. It was about family at the end. And there's a funny thing that happens. Wen ends up getting a movie company and ends up making a movie with a star actor to really make Kekanese people seem good, more so than bad, because they're usually cast as villains. And so I forget what it's called. It's like the black and the white, or the Jade and the whatever. It's something like that. But then the sequel is too black, too white, right? And it's literally a joke about the Fast and Furious. And this is kind of like that in a way, because the moral of the story is family and the people you take care of, and the choices that you make is about them in this world, and the importance of all of our choices and how it affects one another and our family. And so even though this book is brutal and has so many fantasy elements and politics and things, it just pays off so well and ends up being a great story. The ending just is heart-wrenching because another person dies in this story, and you get to see that play out as well in a fascinating way. But the choice they make at the end, the book ends on Andon, and it's just so well done, and it's beautiful. And I can't even begin to fathom how this book was written. It was so good. And so I highly recommend this series to anybody who's interested in this. There's so much story and meaning in this fantasy novel that just resonated with me in such a good way. And I was so intrigued by all the politics and, of course, the notes on family. So I love it. And I think you should read it. And if I was to give it a rating and put on Goodreads, it's going to be 5 stars. This is better than Jade War, in my opinion. It's a great finale. It's a great series. And so I recommend this series to anybody who wants to dabble in fantasy. It's fantastic, and it's really, really good. So that's my review. That's my thoughts. That's what this book meant to me. And I hope you enjoyed it. And I hope you read it. So have a great day. And as always, toodles.